I like your necklace.
Oh, oh my god! Wait, I've actually never met anyone with this necklace.
Really?
Yeah.
I stole it from my mom.
I had another one that I stole from her, but she took it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yay! Sorry for the delay. Hi everyone. We are Ava. Nate. No, we'll just go to the next one. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ava. We are the two co-heads of the education department at Blockchain at Berkeley. I had previously taught the fundamentals of blockchain decal, and I'm also the edX moderator for our two online courses. If anyone's interested in taking them, they're called Bitcoin and Cryptocurrencies and Blockchain Technology. Do you want to intro?
Oh, sure. I'm Naman. I was a junior project, so I'm a developer in Blockchain at Berkeley. I was a junior project lead for Alio, and then I'm the CTO of a crypto startup now. And I'm previously able to decentralize.
And then I'm Nate. I am also the co-head of education alongside Ava for Blockchain at Berkeley. And I was GSI for taught classes in blockchain and done some research. And I am the Cal Intramural Flag football starting quarterback. So yeah.
So just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today, we were told that this is like a very overview, high level. So we are doing the most basic in the decal that we teach. We go pretty much into depth on all these topics, but we just want to make sure that you guys can walk away with some definitions that you feel good about and can ask us questions about it after. So to start, we're going to talk about cryptocurrency, what is it? Then Bitcoin as a case study for cryptocurrency and talk about some of the basics in terms of mechanics of Bitcoin and how it works. Then we're going to talk about decentralized finance because it's supposed to be a financial literacy workshop, and there are a lot of buzzwords around decentralized finance right now that we want to define for you. Then we're going to talk about Bitcoin in the news and talk about some of the current events that you might hear about, and then the future of cryptocurrency and where we think it's going. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, but so these are some buzzwords that you may have heard, and we just want to give you some running definitions that you can work with. Obviously, we hope that you can come up with your own definitions for these, but just to sort of give you a starting point, we see cryptocurrency as a form of currency that's stored completely digitally and isn't issued by a central authority. Basically means that there's no physical counterpart, there's no gold standard, there's no central bank that's issuing monetary policy, made secure with cryptography, distributed consensus, and economic incentive alignment. If those words mean nothing to you, don't worry, they didn't to me either. But we'll talk a little bit about this, not too much. So if you guys are interested at all, I encourage you to do your own research. Cryptography is basically a way to, it's security using computer science. Distributed consensus we'll talk a little bit about, et cetera, et cetera. So for example, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. A cryptocurrency is not Bitcoin. Blockchain is the data structure used to represent a cryptocurrency. It stores data in a way that allows multiple parties to access it reliably without having to trust one another. So if you guys are not CS people, I'm not a CS person, data structure means nothing to you. You can essentially think about blockchain as a database. It's just a slightly different type of database. Where instead of the way that Facebook stores data, for example, they have servers that are owned by Facebook and Facebook gets to access them and we don't get to access them, the way that a blockchain stores data is decentralized. So everyone gets to access the data that is stored on a blockchain, and that is fundamental to the way that it maintains security. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, we can, sorry, just to go back to the previous slide, does that make sense at a basic level? Okay, cool. So if we're going to say that Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, we should be able to back that up and talk about the currency part of cryptocurrency. So what are the key characteristics of a currency? It should be durable, so the currency does not lose value and is not something made irredeemable. I can't move the thing. That's okay. It's fine. Just yeah. Okay. Made irredeemable is not destroyed or made irredeemable easily. So basically, just it's the dollar. You should be able to transport it. You should be able to use it. Portability, the currency is easy to transport from place to place, which is what I just talked about. Divisibility, the currency can be easily exchanged in different denominations. So you should be able to break up a $100 bill into 20s and 50s and 5s and 1s. Uniformity, all units of the currency are identical in value. So this is also called fungibility. So if you've heard of non-fungible tokens, for example, the whole basis of that is that the units of those are not identical in value, so they have different values. Whereas a currency should be fungible, meaning $1 should not be more than another dollar should not be more than another dollar. And there should be limited supply. So the supply of the currency can't be arbitrarily inflated, which should inherently make sense if you think about the laws of supply and demand. There should be a limited supply so that it can maintain value. And acceptability, the currency must be sufficiently widely accepted so that it can be a store of value for you and others as well. Okay, so now key characteristics of a blockchain. So this is more speaking to the crypto part of a cryptocurrency. So these are like the three basic traits that we see in blockchains. They're evolving every day. So you might be like, oh, but this blockchain like doesn't use Nakamoto consensus. Like that's totally true. There are some blockchains that don't, but these are sort of just like a jumping off point for us. So the first is decentralized control. So communal consensus, rather than one party's decision, I think that's what that says, dictates who gets to access or update. You just move it and like that. Yeah, rather than one party's decision dictates who gets to access or update the blockchain, which is what I said earlier. So essentially, the entire community has a say in what gets done and what doesn't get done. So if you want something to change about the way that a network works, that is something that everyone gets to decide. If you want to push an update to the network, some of you may have heard of the Ethereum merge, for example, that was something that the whole network had to agree upon. That wasn't just, you know, the CEO of Ethereum saying, hey, we want to make this update, so we're going to do it. That was something that everyone had to agree upon, so that was really cool. Tamper evidence. It's immediately obvious if data stored on the blockchain has been tampered with. Something that I want to point out here is that this isn't tamper resistant, it's just tamper evident. So if someone messes with data on the blockchain, like that is possible, that can happen. It's not resistant to that. It is just evident when that does happen. So the rest of the network can see, oh, like someone messed with this. So we can see that they were acting maliciously and we can choose not to include this data now. But it's still a deliberate choice that the network has to make. It's not like someone is making those choices on your behalf. And then the last is Nakamoto consensus, which means that one has to provably spend resources when updating the blockchain. This isn't a concept that we're going to get to today, but if you've ever heard of proof of work or proof of stake, this is what that's referring to. So proof of something consensus is also referred to as Nakamoto consensus, which is this idea that you have to provably spend resources. Sorry, we're really front loading you with a lot of information, but we just wanted to make sure that we could get to everything. So what's the case for digital cash? Some of the pros, it's portable, it's fast, it's secure, it's private. Some of the cons are that it's replicable, and we're going to get to this in the next slide. So we trust banks with some very sensitive services, such as transferring and redeeming money, actively recording account history, and storing your personal information. And 99.9% of the time, they do all this very, very well, and there's no reason we shouldn't trust them. But some of the time, like we saw in 2008, they actually we can't trust them to redeem our own money because they'll be like, dude, we don't have your money. And so in those times, that was actually 2008 is when Bitcoin was 2009, I think, is when Bitcoin, the white paper was released as a result of the financial crash, because we realized that we couldn't really trust banks. So how to make a decentralized system do everything that makes sense? Talk about that. So we talk about this double spend problem. So with a bank, the way that it works is that one party records and verifies all transactions. So if I want to send Naman $5, I'm going to go through Bank of America, and Bank of America is going to make sure that this $5 is sitting in my account and that $5 has not been spent elsewhere. Like they're going to make sure that I didn't send it to Nate or to Arun or to anyone else. So that $5 is going straight to Naman, and they're doing all that heavy lifting for me. But with the blockchain, all parties record and verify all transactions. So I'm not putting all that trust in some middleman and some third party to do that. I'm basically saying, I'm telling you that I have $5, and there's like this complicated cryptographic way that I'm proving to you that I have $5, and this entire room of people can also verify that I have those $5 and that those $5 have not been spent elsewhere. And like you can also verify it, and then I'm going to send you the $5. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of how that's done, but that's the basic way that we solve this problem. And so how do we get everyone to play nice? Like how do we make sure that this whole room of people, the majority of you at least, are playing nice? Everyone records and verifies all transactions. Everyone's ledger should look the same. So we are all basically like, I'm not going to get into like examples, but you can think about it as everyone is writing down every transaction that occurs. And so if one person has a slightly different transaction than the 100 other people in this room, then we're going to know that that person is probably malicious, because why would that one person, like, why he received $100 more than the rest of us have. So like obviously that person is acting maliciously, and if you put that up to scale with like millions of nodes in the network, you can see how you can like easily create checks and balances within the system. And this is done through a combination of cryptography, economics and game theory, and incentive alignment, and distributed systems, which is what I just talked about. that's the end of the first section. I think this is probably the media section. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. This is probably pretty important for like building a foundation for what we're gonna talk about. Yeah.
I think like a couple years ago, I had a couple of Bitcoins on like a hardware wallet,
Uh-huh.
and I like freaked out because I lost the password for it. I found it later, but it was just like really scary because there's no other way to access it, right? But if it's like decentralized and you can access like a blockchain from anywhere, how is that like
Yeah.
accessible?
Okay, so essentially like by being able to access blockchain, you can access all the transactions that happen on a blockchain. So you can see that this wallet sent this to this person, right? But you can't necessarily access any of the wallets. So what you lost was like your own personal wallet, right? But so like I can go to the blockchain and be like, oh, you sent money to him, he sent money to you. But I can't go and be like, well, I can actually access your wallet and then access the money or funds within that wallet without your password.
So it's not actually like stored on the blockchain, it's just like information.
That's a really valid question. We're not gonna talk about this, but I like the way that identities work on a blockchain. So what you lost was your private key is what we would call it, which is like a password. And what is shown on the blockchain is your public key. So your private key basically is like a key, like it's a key that unlocks the funds that are stored on your public key. So when funds are moved around, you're not showing your password, you're showing, hey, there was 5 Bitcoin under this public key that was sent to this other public key. And that is what's stored.
So you can see Venmo charges. Walking through Venmo.
Essentially.
Good enough. Nice work. Yeah,
So if everyone can see every transaction, is there no anonymity?
it's not anonymous. We call it pseudonymous. So pseudonymous means that your like actual identity is not tied to your online digital identity, which is like a series of numbers and letters, but it is not anonymous. So there's still a series of numbers and letters that is attached to the transactions that you're making.
So like in spy movies, when you hear like people talking about walkie-talkies, like red one and rubber ducky, like I know I'm talking to rubber ducky, but I have no idea who the rubber ducky is. So that's the actual.
Any other questions?
So you said everyone's ledger should look the same, right? But what if there was like a malicious party that controlled like 51% of them?
Then you're
I mean, I guess. The idea is that like at some point, like you assume that people are good in general. Like, it's really hard to say like, oh, after you have like millions and millions of users, like even if they're like not good people, that they would go and act with the benefit of someone else who wants to take this.
the longer answer too is like, if you have 51% control of a network in which like, so you're assuming you have 51% of the control of the network, like you probably have a pretty large stake in like whatever token is in that network. You're probably not going to want to cause the downfall of that network because you're going to lose all of the value that you just like created. So that's the basis of proof of stake, for example. So we're talking about Bitcoin right now. It uses a different consensus mechanism called proof of work. But the idea behind proof of stake is that if you end up controlling 51% of the network, you're actually not going to want to cause any like the downfall of the network because you're going to lose the 51% of value that you have.
It's also, there's a common name for it, it's actually called a 51% attack. So if you're trying to do an attack, that's
Yeah, you can
easier to remember there.
Google 51% tokens. Cool. And then we're gonna move on to the interest time.
So essentially like Bitcoin, I guess, is like the main example. So like. Alright, so Bitcoin is like the main example of a cryptocurrency, right? So Bitcoin has a couple components. One is your digital identity, right? So we talked about public keys and private keys. Same thing on Bitcoin. You need to be able to transact with people, so you're sending and receive Bitcoin. And then the distributed ledger is actually basically the piece of paper that you're writing for your transactions on. And then trustless consensus is making sure that like, okay, well, we're gonna assume that we don't actually have to trust each other. We'll just assume 51% of the network is trustworthy. So how do I divide this? You can go to any of these locations on campus. They have Bitcoin ATMs, essentially like allowing you to, I guess it'll spit out a public key and a private key, and you basically own that amount of Bitcoin with your ATM.
You guys remember the Punjabi Daba? You guys notice the Bitcoin ATM in there? There's a Bitcoin ATM in there. Take a look next time you go.
Yeah, and this was the first way before the other forms that we talk about. This was the only way to really get Bitcoin to go and you deposit cash, and then it spits out. Okay, you usually have a password, a private key, and public key for you, and then that's how you log on your computer and then redeem your funds.
Yeah, so this is just an example of a ATM.
Well, another way, I was telling your brother, we were at Safeway and we saw that, yeah, we went by Coinstar, one of the coin machines. And picked up, you can deposit coins and get cash, or you can buy Bitcoin, so. It's definitely gaining some traction, this is a little while.
I know like when you go to an ATM, they take a large percentage. Where does that money actually go to and how do they have access to distributing Bitcoin?
When you go to a Bitcoin ATM.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, Coinstar, a lot of times they'll go to the service that facilitates this transaction.
But how do they have access to distributing?
Because if you're depositing money, well, they.
He's asking where the Bitcoin.
Like,
So essentially, yeah, so I guess Bitcoin miners are the only people that actually like generate Bitcoin or actually get Bitcoin. And that happens by validating transactions on chain. So basically, a Bitcoin miner basically, I guess, not to go down the rabbit hole, but essentially will get a little reward for being like, okay, I'm gonna validate that these transactions happen. And they get a certain like block reward, and then they can sell that.
So the idea is just like you have, let's say we want to transact, we have Venmo's facilitating it. Rather than having a third party that facilitates all these transactions, we have another set of users who will contribute energy or some kind of economic resource. And in response, and like, as a result, by doing so, providing loyalty, then they will get Bitcoin that is generated automatically through computer science code, and that will go to them. And then from there, they can do what they want with that money. So like, they are the Venmo. There's a whole separate group of miners, which is what they're called in Bitcoin, that facilitate these transactions and provide loyalty and resources and allow for the Bitcoin network to run in a way that we.
You're buying Bitcoin, you're buying already mined coins.
Exactly.
But who gives the
You're
coin?
you're getting to a very important point that the three of us were literally just discussing, which is that the fiat like cash to crypto, like are very poor right now. So if you want to go from fiat to crypto, you have to go through a centralized. So like Coinstar, for example, owns the Bitcoin that they're basically giving to you. So the whole like ideology behind Bitcoin, where it should be completely decentralized, it's very difficult to do right now unless you're literally a miner and you're literally getting block rewards from it because you have to go from cash to Bitcoin somehow. I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so I guess other places you can buy Bitcoin, you can buy more centralized exchanges like Kraken, Coinbase, and the rest.
This goes for any crypto.
So.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, just saying a little bit over again, those interested, like they want to go home and try out, we buy $50 worth of Bitcoin or some kind of cryptocurrency. You can do so, you can just get a Coinbase account, and it's pretty straightforward too. All you do is you make an account and you'll go on and then you select whatever cryptocurrency you want to buy, and then the amount in your local currency, and then you can choose and specify the wallet, the address where you want these funds to be distributed and then or sent to, and then you'll pay for it and buy it. And so Coinbase, like we said, it is a centralized exchange, meaning that there is a large custodial party, Coinbase itself, that company that owns these funds and is the one dishing them out. And so there are other types of exchanges called decentralized exchanges that work a little differently, but we don't think we'll get into that too much today, maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, so I guess like what are some of the challenges with buying Bitcoin? Like, you know, as we discussed, like we need a wallet, which a lot of people don't actually know how it works. So it ends up with like a lot of like technical difficulties when you're working with a wallet. There's a pretty high fee for linking a bank account or credit card. Like if you look at Coinbase, they take like 7% when you want to like basically transfer fiat to crypto, and fiat needs cash. Just clarify. And then basically like also Bitcoin transactions, because you have this whole like system where everybody has to agree, it takes a while for everyone to agree. And that means that like by the time that we got transfer, let's say I want to send money to Nate, like by the time that $5 has been like actually verified, it's going to be like $4 or $5. And then I guess like how is Bitcoin spent? It's basically just a piece of data that keeps track of who sent money to who. So basically, like when I send money to him, I'm just gonna write like just send it to everybody and say I did this, and basically everybody just writes it down on their ledger. That's basically all. And then I guess some of the pros and cons of Bitcoin. The pros are the fact that it's decentralized, it's a distributed ledger, it's majority consensus and immutable. But some of the cons, like as we discussed with banks, like you don't have like that immediate transaction because it's like a bank is just a lot faster. It's unequal in the sense that like Bitcoin miners are the only ones that can really get Bitcoin right now, and that mining requires a high powered computer, which is pretty expensive. It's like 15K. And then it's pretty volatile in its value, and that's why stablecoins are invented, which we'll talk about later. And then it's security. So yeah, so in terms of like decentralization, it's like, you know, without a blockchain, you're sending things to one person and you have to trust that one person. But with a blockchain, you actually like send it to everybody, so you actually just know that everything's more transparent. You don't actually have behind the scenes. You can see what's happening with your money, you know. And then immutability, like in this sense, the fact that you have the timestamp and like basically the time that every transaction happened. So say like a computer on the network basically fails, you can go back and sort of see that, okay, at this time, this computer center that like sent out a transaction, but it failed, so that I can add it in later. Or in another sense, it's just like you're not going to be able to change it after it's been put on the blockchain, which makes it kind of like you can't refund people and you can't like do that. But that's better because a refund from a bank essentially ends with, I mean, basically giving someone the power to give you money or control your money on the market.
So my friends know that. So the whole idea here is you're not putting all your eggs in one basket versus, let's say, rather we have one Facebook server and we're having a bunch of different accounts that are communicating back and forth, my computer, Off's computer, whatever it may be. If we use this kind of network of computers or nodes, we don't have to rely on one central party crashing. And so that's why we have a lot less like denial of service or any kind of attacks or issues that come from only having one party that everyone's talking to. And so the idea here, which I was getting into, is if one computer doesn't respond, we still have copies on those two. And so the top two nodes, and imagine this is actually hundreds of thousands of devices instead, they can all still continue running without needing this one computer. And when this computer goes off, we can track the exact point where this computer lost, went offline. And from there, because everything is timestamped in an effective manner, we know exactly where that point was when the computer went offline. And that helps us to avoid any potential for attacks or challenges that come from, computer network issues.
Yeah, so essentially it's like, I don't know if you guys noticed, like this summer, like Instagram went down or Spotify went down, like last semester, and it's like, that's because everything's on a centralized server, so if that one server goes down, you lose access to everything. Whereas on a distributed network, because it's on every single computer, like one node can basically go down and still have access to copy. And then I guess one of the biggest cons of Bitcoin is, say you want to use it on a day-to-day basis, like as I said, it takes almost 4 hours to sort of confirm a transaction. And if I want to confirm my $5 transaction I made when I buy food, I can't really use Bitcoin to do that. Or I can't really use Bitcoin to do that. But normally, like this regards more like expensive payments, because those are the ones that are no relation, so nobody cares about. Yeah. And then as we talked about like inequality of access, and like he asked, like essentially Bitcoin comes from mining Bitcoin. And a lot of Bitcoin mining now is done by these like groups of people that own a ton of like machines that actually are really, really expensive. So they get access to all the Bitcoin. And then the biggest con for day-to-day use is the fact that it's also volatile. Like if you look at the prices, it's gone from like 30K to 60K back down to 25K here. And there's a lack of credibility. I guess not as many people in the world really accept it because a lot of people don't really understand it. And then there is also liquidity challenges with sort of like depositing or removing Bitcoin easily, like making large transactions isn't necessarily that easy. And then another thing is like he said, like you forgot his password to his hardware wallet. Like essentially, if you lose your private key, you're screwed. So not on like MetaMask or a lot of different like hot wallet services, they'll let you have a username and password, and they'll have you have like your recovery phrase or whatever. But a wallet at its core is just a public key and a private key. If you lose your private key, you lose it. And then I guess in terms of security, like we do trust banks with a lot of like information. You trust them with your social security, you trust them with your identity, you trust them with, you know, making sure money goes from one person to another. Obviously, we've seen money laundering happen in that kind of situation as well. And Yeah, it's just like, we want to have a decentralized system that doesn't necessarily have to rely on a bank and you giving up all this like power to the bank, like essentially like. I think it's like fight between the cryptocurrency and banks where like JP Morgan sort of shut down one of the big crypto guys like bank account, so he had no access to any of this funds from the bank, which shouldn't actually allow.
Yay! Okay, now we're gonna do something interactive, so you guys can like have a little fun. Not that cool, but like you guys might find it cool. Okay, so go to www.bitaddress.org. You do it on your phone, you do it on your computer.
Oh, can we do it too?
No. Okay, so basically the way this works is it's gonna create all of you guys, it's gonna create a wallet for all of you. Like not really, it's gonna basically show you what a wallet could look like. So when you move your mouse around like this, it just like the way this website works is it's randomizing these letters to give you the most random possible like wallet address. So it's just kind of fun, like you just do this. If you want to like go faster, you go like this, and you like type in and like randomize it for you. Oh, really fast. Is this working for you guys on your phones?
Yeah.
Ta-da! It's so fun, you guys. Okay, generate Bitcoin address, and then once you're done, yay, there's my Bitcoin address. So if I wanted to, I could basically set this to be my public key. This is when we're talking about letters and numbers as your public key. Like this is what gets shown. This is your private key. This is very secret. Don't want anyone to know this. Just showing you guys all my private key right now. Because I don't plan on using this. And this will tell you a little bit like about Bitcoin wallet as simple as a single parent and a Bitcoin address that's corresponding to Bitcoin private key. Such a wallet has been generated for you in your web browser and it's displayed. So like there's different types of wallets that you can create on bitaddress.org, but it's just a basic example of how you can create a wallet. And so all of you guys now have wallets if you so wish to. Okay, yay.
So we send out a form after, please send your private.
Okay, any questions on that whole section that we just did? Yes,
Wait, so if you have access to someone's private key,
you have access to that.
gotcha. So. So for a website like bitaddress.org,
Yeah,
wouldn't it
Yeah.
make sense for them to store
Yeah,
data of
yeah.
every single private key generated? And then maybe like 1 in 1,000 private keys someone actually uses, and then maybe like 10 years down the line, they can just go to their database and take,
yeah. I've never actually like done that for my wallet. I think it's just more fun as like an activity. And I think that they also don't intend for you to actually use it. But you can, like,
Just don't be one of the 1,000.
yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking the right way now.
Also, the way that a lot of people create wallets, not like this is a tangent, but they will have multiple different wallets. They never have too much on one wallet. And then they can like transfer funds between, so you can't really track it. Yay! Decentralized finance. Okay, who's excited to learn about DeFi? Raise your hand. Yeah, raise your hand if you've heard of DeFi before. / decentralized. No, actually less than I thought. Okay. That's cool. All right, so we're gonna learn a little about decentralized finance. Starting with what is it? So if you haven't heard of decentralized finance, it's the movement to build an open, global, and interconnected financial system without the drawbacks of traditional finance that we discussed. So the drawbacks that come with banks and there being a third party that has to basically verify every transaction that happens. So cryptocurrency is great, but finance covers so much more. So instead of just having a currency that you can use, for like transacting or everyday items like coffee, like whatever, finance, you can actually get into like some really fun finance things, which I'll talk about in a second. So this gives more power to people. You're basically creating more utility using a blockchain and using cryptocurrency for individuals. Often built on blockchain platforms that offer security guarantees, and it's continuously developing. DeFi is an experiment that is so much room for growth. So I can't emphasize this enough. We're going to talk a little bit about DeFi fails at the end, but DeFi has so much room for growth. I'd argue like a lot of what DeFi is today is not at all what it's going to be long term, but it's definitely still exciting to talk about, and I think it's important to know what it is. Again, wait, I also just want to say, like, we are not trying to make any normative statements here about blockchain or crypto in general. Like, this is purely informational. We're not saying that it's better or worse than any sort of existing system. It's not like financial advice at all. I just want to make that clear. But it's supposed to be educational. Okay, so there are 5 pillars of DeFi. So the first is transparency. So smart contract code is open source and publicly verifiable. Experimentation, write code, fork project, and deploy quickly. Limitless sandbox. So a ton of what you'll see in DeFi will be like literally like 3-day projects that are suddenly have like $1 billion in total value locked, and you're like, how is this happening right now? So it's super experimental, and that's a huge pillar. Okay, accessibility, borderless system accessible to anyone with internet connection. I can't emphasize this enough. Like, this is a huge part of what makes DeFi so cool, is that there are no borders. It's super international, and it enables payments across borders that would otherwise be super difficult within traditional financial systems. You can do very easily within DeFi, which has helped like incredible, like, I don't know. I've heard like great stories about people who like usually wouldn't be able to like send money back home, for example, but like can now do it using DeFi, which I think is really cool. Composability, so interoperability between on-chain platforms, money Legos. So this is like, I don't expect anyone in this room to know what that means. Interoperability between on-chain platforms, like what's that mean? But it's basically just saying like, with blockchains are typically very siloed. So if you have money stored on one blockchain and money stored on another, like let's say Bitcoin and Ethereum, these are 2 separate blockchains, two separate databases. It's very difficult to transfer money from one to another. So a huge part of DeFi is thinking about creative ways to transfer money between 2 blockchains, and that's called interoperability, is when 2 blockchains are able to operate within each other. Permissibility, so open financial platforms, no conditions. So 5 pillars. Okay, so these are the 6 key terms that we chose that we think you guys should walk away having a better idea about what these are than when you walked into this room. So the first thing I'm going to go over are stablecoins. So stablecoins, kind of what it sounds like, it's cryptocurrency that maintains a stable value, and self-explanatory for why this exists. But one of the cons of Bitcoin that we discussed earlier was volatility. So the fact that it changes value day to day, month to month, year to year in like an insane amount means that it can't really be used as a currency yet. So stablecoins basically unlock this whole aspect of cryptocurrency that was previously untouchable by volatile currencies, because now you can use it as like a form of payment for your job, for example, or you can, it's just much more usable. A DEX. So have you raise your hand if you've heard of a DEX before? Okay. Nice. Okay, so a DEX is a decentralized exchange. So we talked about Coinbase as a centralized exchange because they own your tokens and you're purchasing it from them. DEXs are basically ways that you can transfer between cryptocurrencies in a decentralized way, where no one actually is like taking control of your tokens in between. Like they're yours the whole time. It removes the need for middlemen. And AMM is an automated market maker. So it uses liquidity pools to enable transactions. AMMs and DEXs are very intimately related, and we'll get to that. Liquidity mining is when you receive a protocol's native tokens in exchange for providing liquidity to that protocol. What does that mean? I'm going to talk about it in a second. Yield farming is the returns that you earn by lending crypto to a protocol. And derivatives, we have those in traditional finance, but it's an asset that derives value from an underlying entity. And so derivatives are also very big in DeFi. And so I'd say derivatives and stablecoins are sort of like their own separate concepts here. DEXs and AMMs are very much linked. Liquidity mining and yield farming are very much linked, and then those 4 are very much linked together as well. So there are many different types of stablecoins. When I talked about stablecoins earlier, I mentioned how they're not volatile, but how do we make sure that they're not volatile in a world where all cryptocurrencies are super volatile? There are 4 different ways of doing so. The first is reserve-backed, often sort of centralized stablecoins, because they have to be centralized, because you're basically saying like USDT, USDC, they're promising you that they have a reserve of all of the stablecoins that they issue out. So let's say they're issuing 10 USDT today. They're saying we have $10 worth of US dollars in our reserve, backing this up. So you're essentially, it's like not very different from exchanging dollars in the real world, except that you're just exchanging them on exchanging them digitally, essentially. Collateral-backed decentralized stablecoins are a little bit better. So you're backing these back in the day. You're using crypto to collateralize them. So if I want to go and get like 3 DAI, for example, I will have to lock up a little bit more than 3 DAIs worth of different cryptos, so like ETH, Bitcoin, for example. And so then they will give me a free DAI. But let's say that because Ethereum and Bitcoin are kind of volatile, you might say like, okay, well, what if the value of the collateral, drops day to day? You basically have to make sure that you're over collateralizing whatever you're taking out. So if I want 3 DAI, I need to put in like, let's say 5 DAI's worth. And if that's still not enough, and if the value still drops below, then you're liquidated. So that's how they make sure that their protocol is like always stable and always functioning, is that they make sure that if the collateral that you put up drops below the value that you've taken out, then they sell all the collateral that you have immediately. And they make sure that the value is like always, there's never like any value lost in the protocol. Then there's partially collateralized, decentralized stable coins. So these are basically a mix of collateral backed and algorithmic. And then the last, algorithmic decentralized stable coins, these are uncollateralized. We're going to talk about UST a little bit later, but this is still widely experimental and still has not been proven to work. So UST, if you guys heard what happened in May with, originally if you've heard of Terra, Luna, within crypto, there was the main thing that happened that basically caused the entire crypto crash. Basically what happened was that UST was becoming the largest stable coin by value. Like TVL in crypto is the same as like market cap. If you guys are familiar with the idea of market cap for stocks, was becoming one of the largest stable coins by TVL. And then it basically imploded. And we're gonna talk about that when we talk about DeFi files. Okay, getting into DEXs. I'm gonna try to go quickly because I think we're running out of time. So why do we need an exchange? Why do we need a decentralized exchange? So with so many cryptocurrencies out there, we want to know, how do you go from A to B? So if I want to transfer between Uni, which is a cryptocurrency from the protocol called Uniswap, to ETH, how do I transfer between these? Like, I'm not going to go to a bank and say, hey, I want to transfer Genies, right? So we want to make sure that we can have a decentralized exchange, because we want to give power to the people in the markets. The whole ideology behind blockchain is decentralized. We want to maintain that when we're transacting. So how do we actually remove the middleman? We do that through AMMs. So what are AMMs? So basically a DEX is just an umbrella term for a decentralized exchange. Decentralized exchanges are powered by AMMs. So AMMs are automated market makers that use liquidity pools to make sure that the exchanges that are happening are always decentralized. So rather than match orders 1-to-1, which is also an option for a decentralized exchange, but we're not going to talk about it because it's not as common, which is essentially just like, hey, I'm selling $10 worth of ETH. He wants to buy $10 worth of ETH. We're going to exactly match those in an order book. You can see how like that's very time consuming and like would take a very long time to find someone who wants to buy the exact same amount that you want to sell and in the same 2 tokens that you're trying to transact in. That's why order book mechanisms are not as common in DeFi, and AMMs are more common. So why not use a pool of liquidity? So it's a favorite thing is like you have like literal pools, and let's say we want to go from ETH to Uni, which is the example I was talking about. You're gonna fill this up with some amount of ETH, and you're gonna fill this up with some amount of Uni, and you're gonna make sure that these always have like a stable amount of both, so that when I come here to the AMM and I'm like, okay, I have 10 ETH and I want to transact for the equivalent value of Uni. So I'm going to put 10 ETH into this pool, and I'm going to take some amount out of this pool. This automated market maker has a function. Uniswap, for example, uses X times Y equals K. It's called the constant product function. We're not going to get into like the mechanics of how that works. But there's a function in place that makes sure that the value of this pool is always stable and always maintains the same product of K. So X and Y refer to how many ETH and how many Uni are here. So like there's X amount of ETH in this pool right now, and there's Y amount of Uni, and these always have to equal K. So if I'm putting in 10X and then X is going to go up, and I'm taking out Y, then Y is going to go down, and we just need to make sure that it's always equaling K. So whatever amount of Uni it gives me, it will give me the amount K divided by X. Does that make it's like a very basic formula, X times Y equals K, but it actually is like very important in DeFi. And if you're interested in how that works, I encourage you to read up on Uniswap. They've like since updated exactly how they work. I think they're Uniswap V3 now. So yeah, just look it up. Very cool. That's the basic idea of an automated market maker. Do you have any questions before I move on how automated market makers work? Yeah.
So a pool exists for every possible transaction between two different coins, like.
Yes, and every coin that Uniswap chooses to support, there is a liquidity tool for.
So what is Uniswap?
It is a decentralized protocol built on Ethereum. So Ethereum has like we've like thrown around like Ethereum, like Ethereum is a blockchain where you can build applications on top.
So Uniswap is only for Ethereum to other coins.
It's so any coin that is on Ethereum, Uniswap supports. And there are many different coins that exist on it.
Ethereum is like a network of coins.
Yes, it's a network of different protocols, kind of.
It's like your foundation, it's the virtual machine that you can use to build one, so you can use it to explore, and you see what
And it's almost 10.
my.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly move through the next one, sorry. Okay, yield farming, has anyone heard of yield farming? Raise your hand. No, okay. Then this is like, I guess I got a little bit too in the weeds here, but if you ever hear what yield farming is, you're like, oh, like I'm yield farming on this and this like protocol. It's basically just refers to the process of earning rewards by lending or staking your crypto. So protocols will incentivize you to lend your crypto by giving you a portion of the protocol rewards that they receive from lending out that crypto. That's what yield farming is. Liquidity mining is like, you think of it like concentric circles. It is like a smaller, it is a type of yield farming where you are also earning a protocol token. So if I'm on Uniswap and I'm like providing some form of liquidity for them, then they might incentivize me to do that by providing their native token called Uni to me. And that is called liquidity mining, when I'm basically taking their token as a reward for providing liquidity. So when a yield farmer also gets a protocol's native token in exchange for the liquidity, this is called liquidity mining. So there's a very slight difference between the two, but I wanted to draw the difference there. Derivatives, who's familiar with financial derivatives in the real world and how they work? Like options are a derivative, for example, if you know what options are, kind of.
Futures, forwards, overall.
Who knows what options are, right? Okay. So a contract that derives value from underlying entities' performance over time is a derivative. So derivatives are some of the most mature and sophisticated financial tools that we have in the real world. Like that's why options are so confusing. They're very sophisticated. And DeFi can recreate derivatives in a decentralized fashion, increasing access to the people who like can be involved with derivatives financially. And it mimics traditional forward, futures, options, and swaps, but also enables new products. So these are two derivatives platforms, DeFi derivatives, Open and FTX, that you can look into if you're interested in derivatives. All right, so I told you I was gonna talk about DeFi fails. Here are two DeFi fails. Crypto market maker winner view had for $160 million. This happened last night. And then the fall of Terra. So I mentioned Terra earlier. That happened in May. And that was catastrophic for the crypto world, and was honestly pretty scary for a lot of people. A lot of people lost a lot of money in there. Okay, questions on DeFi, and then we're gonna zoom through the last bit. I think it's gonna take 5 minutes after that. I know there are questions on DeFi, but it's okay. We'll move on.
Okay, well, looks like I don't really have time for this, so I'll speed through this right now. Just get some closing thoughts. So. Never get that. Any questions here? So I would say, just to close, a few things. A lot of times what happens, what gets caught in the news is the idea of crypto being a scam or crypto being some kind of really volatile scam-like asset or phenomenon, however you want to put it. But I encourage all of you to look at blockchain as much more than that. I mean, I see, and I think most of us in blockchain at Berkeley see cryptocurrency as just a sandbox for blockchain. And so it's what draws people in. A lot of time piques people's interest, and it's what leads them to want to learn about this space. But there's so much more that can be done in terms of building and connecting and creating. I think DeFi is one of the coolest applications because it's replicating an entire financial system without the banks. And so that is not an easy task. And what's so exciting about it is that it's such a new field. I'd say it grows at 3 times the rate of most other different industries.
I said 4.
Oh, well, hear that 4 times. Wild. Do I hear 5? So I just want one big takeaway I'd like to end with here. We have a quick quiz. Does anyone want to try to answer this?
Right.
Don't absorb. Have a key. Oh, what do you want candy now?
We actually took questions though. We don't have time though. You guys can get candy. I know, but you guys probably want to.
Yeah. So we'll stick around for a little bit if you have any questions, and feel free to email us. We have questions for you. Okay, we'll speed on this. Does anyone explain the difference between cryptocurrency and blockchain in one sentence? Yeah.
In the technology and cryptocurrency is like concept.
Close enough.
How does the blockchain make sure people don't spend their money twice?
Yes.
Bang. What is a DEX?
Decentralized exchange.
Bang. How do decentralized exchanges enable trading to occur?
This is the hard one.
Those things.
Yes.
And we did not really talk about single coins.
Yeah, we did.
Reserve back.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. How does the ANM pool work? Oh, what is the basic concept behind Web3?
Everything on the block.
We didn't talk about.
What was in that last section? I'm expecting a little bit. What are some of one pro and one con of cryptocurrency? Someone who's not answered one yet, who might want to. One pro, one con.
Well, con is, basically no enemy would be always growing.
I'm talking about it here.
And people can't have like your information unless they have like your
There we go.
No.
Okay, well.
You were close, but that's.
So that's everything. Thanks so much for being here.
Sorry, you went over.
Yeah.